Good morning, everyone. Britt Simon here. Hope you're all well. I knew I was going to get DV 2027 questions, so let's talk about that. That is interesting. Greetings to Joe. How you doing? From Switzerland. And Send Smart Vice. Good morning. When will DV Greencard 2027 close? When will it close, or when will it be open? Is really what you want to know, right? New intro, yeah, that was kind of fun, wasn't it, Philip? Okay, so let's talk about DV27. I'm actually quite surprised that we haven't heard anything at all about DV 2027. There isn't any news to share. Now, perhaps we should talk about where we're going to see it and what will be the impacts here, because there is beginning to be, a very obvious impact here, and I think I haven't probably made that clear enough how I see that. So the Federal Register is the sort of official first place that we get to hear about the entry period. The Federal Register, you can look it up online, and it's the sort of the publicly available documentation for everything that the government publishes, right? And but occasionally we hear sort of official rumors even before the Federal Register gets published. So we may hear about the entry dates, prior to it actually appearing in the Federal Register. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But I think the piece that we need to consider is what will be the impact of this delay in the entry period, and also is there going to be some other sort of impacts? Like some people have said to me on my blog at BritSimonSays.com, some people have said to me that they believe that the government are just trying to sort of cancel the DV lottery by not having the entry period. They can't do that, actually. They can't not have the process. They have to hold some sort of lottery process each year. It's part of the US immigration law. There's nothing they can they can do to just sort of cancel it on a whim because they're introducing a $1 fee. They can't do that. So it will happen. The lottery entry period will happen, but there is going to be a knock-on effect. So rather than the entry period being as normal from October to the first week of November, it's now going to be, let's say, it's going to be at least a month to 2 months delayed, right? Because the announcement, let's say the announcement comes out this next week or the week after that, and I have no idea, I have no clue when it's going to come out. But it looks like that we'll be talking about an entry period, let's say in December, right? Now, then that means that there will be a delay to the announcement. It won't be announced in May, it'll actually be pushed back. And we have seen some years where the entry period was delayed, so the announcement period is delayed as well. It happened in, I think it was in 2018 maybe. I think it happened in 2020 as well. Instead of announcing the results in May, they announced them, I think, in June. And it can happen. That delay can happen. But think about what that really causes. The first interviews for DV 2027 would be held from October 1st, 2026. That's during the beginning of the fiscal year, and the fiscal year lasts from October to the end of September of 2027, right? So in order to schedule the interviews for October, they actually have to do that based on DS-260s submitted and processed before about August, right, in the normal year. So if they delay the results to, let's say, June or even July, then there's not going to be very much time for them to do the processing of the DS-260s before they have to start scheduling the first interviews in October and November and so on. It's actually going to be an impact to that time period. So this delay that we're going through right now is beginning to be quite impactful. It's annoying for sure, but it's also becoming impactful. And I think at some point they will have to say, how can we mitigate or how can we reduce the impact of that? And one of the things that they can do is that they can select less people. Instead of selecting 130,000 people, maybe they only select 100,000 people. Why would they do that? Well, that means there's less people submitting their DS260s. So even though there's less time, it won't be quite so impactful because less people will be submitting their DS260s anyway, because less people will have been told they were winners. So they're going to have to do something. I think it's already getting to the point where they would have to do something, and that could be, could have an interesting impact to DV 2027 if they reduce the number of selectees. In my view, that actually might be kind of a cool thing, because it means that if you are selected, you'd have a much better chance of getting your interview and therefore getting your green card. Now, we have yet to see whether the travel ban and that sort of thing would still be in place. The travel ban is affecting about 28,000 of the selectees in DV 2026. If that continues into DV 2027, which is perfectly possible, then how many people would be impacted from that, and what does that do to the overall processing speed and so on? There's a lot to this, right? So but bottom line is, I don't have any news to share with you. I'd love to share some news, but I don't have some news to share in terms of DV 27 opening dates, and we just have to wait and see when they announce it. But I do think they're already starting to have some concerns. Couple of other things is the shutdown has not affected the DV lottery process in terms of the announcement of the entry period. That just isn't true. The entry period for DV Lottery 2027 was already delayed before the shutdown started. The shutdown probably doesn't affect very much at all with regard to the DV Lottery. It doesn't affect KCC, for example, because that's funded by the fees that we pay when we go through the interviews. And this is, largely speaking, a self-funded program. But there could be some sort of knock-on impacts in other departments that support the DV processing. And so there could be some impacts if this shutdown drags on for much longer. There could be some other impacts. By the way, speaking of the shutdown, America is going through, some Americans are having a tough time. When the government shuts down, there are some departments that stay open, and the staff from those departments actually get paid in various ways. But there are lots of government contracts and government employees that are not getting paid. That money that's not going into the economy is starting to stress the economy, because that money, that liquidity is missing from the banking system. It's not there. Some people are not paying their mortgages. Some people are not paying their car loans and their personal loans and that sort of thing because they're not being paid by the government. Those situations are creating stress for individual people, but also for the banking industry as a whole. And this could actually start to impact the banking industry with the lack of liquidity that's coming from the government employees, as it were, and the government contracts that are all being restricted. And then the other thing that's going to happen, that's actually starting today, kind of thing, being November 1st, is that a lot of people who require a little bit of help from the government, let's say on programs like SNAP, which is food stamps and that sort of thing, those payments are not going to go out. And so there are a lot of people who are actually now starting to worry, or not just starting to worry, but they're already worried about where their payments are going to come to put food on their tables. And so there is, lots of discussion about food banks and charitable organizations that help people that are unable to pay, to put food on their table. And it is incredible to me that we live in a country that has got so much wealth, but so many people are within a few weeks of real poverty, because if you take away their income for 3-4 weeks, they're already having to make trips to charity to get some food for the cupboards. It's really quite staggering. And, I'm insulated from that personally. I don't have, those sort of problems, obviously, but I know people who do. And, I know even with, I've had like little glimpses into that. Like, a friend of my daughter's came to our house one time, and and she was standing in the kitchen looking into our pantry. Our pantry is a small sort of room just off of the kitchen, and it's stacked with all sorts of food items, etc. And this girl was looking into our pantry like with some amazement that there was all this stuff in there, all this food in there, like a store sort of thing. Like we could go in and just pick stuff off a shelf. We don't, if all the stores stopped selling stuff for a while, we'd be fine, because we could just go into the pantry and we could pick stuff off the shelves if we had to. And this was a bit of a shock to me to watch this young girl, actually, with some amazement looking into our fully stocked pantry, right? So there is poverty in this country, and it surrounds us, and it just reinforces for me how I need to educate you guys to make sure you don't live like Americans when you come to America. You have to live differently. You have to, Americans. I'm not knocking Americans. I don't mean it to knock Americans. There are plenty of decent, honest, hardworking folk who are still poor, and I'm not knocking poor people. But there is a sort of a middle class here where they live paycheck to paycheck because they go and they get cars on car loans that they can't afford. They couldn't afford the brand new car. That's why they had to have a car loan. And in their minds, and actually the solution should have been, well, you save up for the car, and in the meantime you drive a used car, a second-hand car. You don't get a personal loan to go on a vacation. You don't pay for vacations and that sort of thing on credit cards. If you don't have the money to go on a vacation, don't go on the bloody vacation. Don't put it on a loan, which is what Americans will do. Don't remortgage your house, refinance your house, and take the cash equity out of your house because you want to pay off credit cards that you spent on frivolous spending $7 a time every time you go to Starbucks to get a coffee, and paying a car note that a car loan that was for a car that you really can't afford simply because you're trying to impress your neighbors. Americans just live in dopey ways when it comes to money, and you guys, if you're going to come to America and you're starting as a reborn person in America, you need to get this message. You need to understand the financial way of winning. And the only way of winning in this country is to have money. If you've got money, this is a fantastic place to live. But if you don't have money in this country, because you don't save money and you don't invest money and that sort of thing, then it's like being, I don't know, it's like looking into a goldfish bowl and seeing what a beautiful time the goldfish are having, but not being able to get in there because you're going to see people with wonderful wealth and things, and you'll think, what am I doing wrong? Often it's because they are mortgaged to the hilt, they got loans and so on. But if you wanted a good life here, you really have to get into a situation where you're saving money from every paycheck you make. And if you're not doing that, then you're already getting behind because, something bad is going to happen at some point. It always does. The car will break down, the tires will need replacing, and, and you'll have an expense to pay. And if you don't have the money in the bank to just pay for those expenses, it can really set you back. So I read a news article this morning about a lawyer that works for the IRS, and he's not being paid right now because of the government shutdown. So he's out selling hot dogs. He's out with a hot dog stand selling hot dogs to try and make enough money so he can put food on the table for his kids. He's a lawyer or an accountant or something. It's like ridiculous situation to be in, for the sake of a few weeks without pay. And I believe many Americans, probably 60-70% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. They've got no real financial worth, which is just nuts. Anyway, that's enough about the shutdown. So Marco, it seems like the shutdown is lasting quite a while. Could it affect the cutoff in the next visa bulletin? It's not really connected, Marco. The visa bulletin is about moving the numbers, etc. They don't consider the shutdown in those things. It doesn't affect the way embassies work. It doesn't affect the way KCC works. So no, there's no real impact there. But also, try and understand. I think a lot of these questions that come, tend to be from the position of your perspective, which is DV lottery. You think it's very important, and it's extremely unimportant in the big picture in America. It's unimportant to immigration numbers in America. The DV lottery numbers, 50,000 odd people that get the visa through DV lottery. That's less than 5% of the immigrant visas handed out each year. It's just nothing. It's a drop in the ocean. The $20 million or something they're going to make from the $1 fee is just nothing. It's not even enough money to pay, a couple of weeks maintenance on Air Force One. It's nothing. The amounts of money, the importance of these things it's a big deal for us, but it means nothing to America in totality. And so, no, when the shutdown happens, the first thing they're thinking about is not, we better adjust the visa bulletin because of the shutdown. No, that's not what they're thinking. AI Picture Maker is here. Cool. Let's see. When will DB27 be open? Talked about that. Okay. I have case number AF 39,500. There's any chances? Okay, let's talk about chances a little bit. So your DV26 selectees, and I'm getting questions from people, particularly with what I there's a couple of times when I've responded to people that their questions are silly, and I don't mean that in a sort of a disrespectful way. But I got a question from someone on BritSimonSays.com that had EU 10,000, and they were asking was their number safe. That's silly to ask me that. Of course it's a safe number. The EU numbers go up to 50,000. We're in month 3, and the 7750 number is where we're at after 3 months. It's going to increase. Like, to ask me about 10,000 is silly. Then I got a guy the other day. I think Dev, you're probably listening. I think this guy says, "Oh, I've got EU 7,000. Is it safe?" It's already freaking current. Why are you asking me if it's safe? Like, it's silly. Silly questions, right? 39,500 AF is almost silly, right? Asking me that question is almost silly. And I do say at the beginning of the year, if your number is in the first half of the number ranges within the regions, don't even bother asking me about whether your number is safe or not, because it's really a bit of a silly question. So with Africa, case numbers go up to about 105,000, we think, based on the poll, right? Say 100,000 or 110,000, it's around about that range. So to ask me about AF 39,500, you're really saying, I'm in the first 40% of numbers. No, we don't know you're in the first 40% of cases, but the first 40% of numbers, am I safe? Well, that's a bit of a silly question because, you're in that first half of numbers. Like, why are you even asking me? If you've got a number in the 70,000s, 80,000, 90,000 range, then I can understand why you're asking me. But asking me about 39,500 is a bit silly, right? So let's just talking about, what the poll showed. The poll showed AF numbers around about 100,000, just over 100,000. EU numbers seem to be up to about 48,000, apart from the UK, of course. Asia region seems to be up to about 29,000 or so. In terms of, and I'm talking about selected numbers, right? Oceania is about 3,200, lower than previous years, which is good. And South America seems to be about 4,500 or so, right? So if you've got case numbers that are about half of those, then you don't even need to ask me. Right? It doesn't make sense to ask me about, a case number at 24,000 EU, right? Or at 15,000 AS, because you're probably fairly safe. Now, there's some nuances to that. Like, if you're in a country that isn't interviewing, that's not good. If you're from one of the limited countries, then it might be a little bit different. So for Uzbekistan, for example, the case numbers don't go to 48,000 for Uzbekistan. They go much lower than that. We don't know where yet, right? but try and use a little bit of common sense with some of these questions. And I can understand the questions. I get the sensitivity about your numbers, but try and use a little bit of common sense first, so that you're not you're not wasting your energy or mine thinking about numbers which are really fine, and you're just being needy. And that's how I see it sometimes. Some of you are just being needy. Some of you just want to be told you're a good boy or a good girl, you'll be fine. I'm busy. I'm really, really, really busy. I have a full-time job. I do this as a hobby. I'm too busy to pat you on the head and play ball with you. You've got to be a little bit more grown up and think for yourselves, right? Please. Anyway, send smart device. Here we go. I'm case number 63021. Could we have a chance with DV studies under the travel ban from countries ongoing? Yeah. 63,000 is not a high number, right? You didn't give me a region, by the way, so I now have to go and kill an angel. But it's not a bad number, okay? So again, use a little bit of questions. What chances does Asia Bulletin has to reach 25,000 in DV Lottery 26? Okay, so this is someone who I think has got a genuine reason to be concerned about their number. If the numbers go to about 29, 30,000 in Asia, and this guy is at 25,000, then he is quite rightly concerned about his number. And you've got good reason, Aman, to be concerned about your number. Now, I don't know whether the visa bulletin is going to reach your number or not. I can't answer your question definitively. There's a lot of things that will happen between now and the end of the year. But I understand this question from this sort of number range. That makes more sense to me, that you would be concerned. Now, to talk about Asia Bulletin, Asia numbers. Asia is very heavily impacted by the travel ban, right? So high case numbers in Asia have more of a chance if the travel ban stays in place for most of the year or all of the year, right? Because if Iran, Yemen, Afghanistan, if those countries are banned, and a couple of others, if those countries are banned, that's a huge number of people that are not able to get their visas, and that could help numbers go higher. It is a little bit frustrating in a sense that it won't be quite as clear cut as some people think it might be, because people who are travel banned will still have their DS-260 processed. They will still be scheduled for interview. The interview slots still have to be given to those cases. And some people will turn up for their interview and simply be refused at the interview. But it doesn't mean that numbers can go much faster right from the beginning and everything's fine for high case numbers. It doesn't work like that. It'll be some time before we can sort of reclaim those numbers based on inactivity from people not fitting in the DS-260s or not turning up at the interviews and so on. So it could have a delayed sort of feed through period to the case numbers, but in other words, we won't see the higher case numbers be reached until much towards the end of the year. But we'll have to wait and see. Okay, can't be too sort of definitive about these things. Steph says, thanks for your help. Just wondering, how do real people manage to live in California? That's so expensive. We've abandoned the idea. A bientôt. Look, it's a strange question in a sense, because people look at the number of the money that you spend to live in California, and they don't think of the benefits of living in California, right? Now, let's say the currency is just it's kind of like it's a relative thing. I'm trying to think how I can explain this, but let's say you choose a place to live based on it appearing to be cheaper, right? And so you go off and you live in Texas or you live in Florida or somewhere like that, and you think you're doing a smart thing because the house prices are less, the rent is less, and that sort of thing. But also your salary will be less, right? Your income will be less. And when you buy a house, that house won't increase so much because, where I live, my house is kind of an anomaly. It's expensive, but I can tell you that. What should I tell you? Okay, so I bought my house in 2017, I think it was. I paid $1.3 million for it. It seemed like a hell of a lot of money to me at the time, and my house now is worth nearly $3 million, right? So I've made $1.7 million in equity on my house because I live in a very expensive place to live. Now, if I hadn't have pushed myself to buy that $1.3 million house, I wouldn't have that additional equity. So maybe I'd have gone to Texas and bought a $400,000 house, and maybe that $400,000 house would be worth $500,000 or $600,000 now, and so I'd have made $100,000 or $200,000, and I'd have missed out on $1.5 million extra of equity based on buying in a more affordable area. Meanwhile, I've been earning significantly more than I would have been earning in Texas, and my salary is adjusted based on where I live. Right, in the area where I live, in my technology space, which I live, there are plenty of people earning $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year, and sometimes very young kids are earning sort of $400,000 or $500,000. So, my salary level, if I'd have moved to Texas or Florida, my salary level would have been lower. So yes, it's more expensive to live in certain places, but you make more money, living in those places. Because I live in a technology area, I've got the choice of many jobs, etc., which are highly paid jobs where the companies are offering me shares and stocks in their companies because that's the norm around here. And so my personal wealth has grown faster in California than it would have grown anywhere else in the world, frankly. Is it expensive to live in California? Yes, it is, but it's nice. It's worth it. We get a lot of protections. We get fantastic weather. We've got fantastic geography that lets us, go and see some beautiful places. Within 2 or 3 hours drive of my house, I can go up to Lake Tahoe. I can go to to enormous national parks or wide, vast open areas. I can go to the coast. I can go, to beaches all up and down the coast. I can drive down to LA. I can go up to Oregon or Washington. California is expensive, but it's worth every penny. And by the way, right now, I feel very lucky to live in California with everything that's going on in the rest of the country. I would not want to live in one of these poor red states. I really wouldn't. It's not just that they're red states and they're mainly Trump followers, etc. It's that the education systems are shit. In some of those states, for kids to go through those education systems, it's awful. And when those kids go through that education, they come out of education in that area. There's nothing for them. There's no business. There's no opportunity. Our kids around here are rubbing shoulders with kids that are going through school, coming out of school, and then going on to jobs that are paying them $150,000, $200,000 a year as kids, right? And so those kids are, they've got a different mindset. When you go to school in, I don't know, Alabama or something, and you come out of school, everybody's unemployed. Most people are unemployed. Your parents are probably struggling to put food on the table. It's just a very, very different situation. I don't care how freaking good the countryside looks in those states. The economic position of those states is just awful. And to cap it all, you've got morons, with red caps, like clapping the president for doing such a wonderful job when he's screwing up the economy. So, no, I don't think California is expensive at all. I think it's the right value for what it is, and the opportunities are huge. But it may not suit you, and it might feel very expensive to start with. But once you're here, you can then, once you've made money here, you can go anywhere else in the world and chill out. I just wish I'd come here earlier. Frankly, that's my only mistake. I should have come here earlier in my life. So anyway, Sana says, hi, I have a small space different with married certificate and passport name. Is it an issue? I put that name in other name section. Small space, no, not really an issue. And you've wisely used the other names section on the DS260, so that's fine. No problem at all. Hi, it's me, your lucky boy from Nevada, Las Vegas. Came 18th September, case number AF35K with dual citizenship, one that was banned, a month later got a green card. Well done for being smart enough to make sure you got your green card despite the awful ban from Trump. What do you expect the next Asia visa bulletin number to be for the lottery to be? I wouldn't be at all surprised if it repeats at 10,000. 10,000 is ridiculously high, for this time of the year, and I don't believe that everyone under 10,000 is being interviewed. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if Asia doesn't move beyond 10,000. Remember, there's only 3 months, 3 visa bulletins have gone. We've got 9 left, right? Some of you are way too concerned about the visa bulletin numbers and whether it moves from month to month, etc. But you're not looking at the big picture. You have to stand back and realize that we've got 12 months in a year. We've seen 3 months. I don't get excited about what the numbers are after 3 months of a 12-month process. It's like watching the first 3 minutes of a 12-minute, film and thinking you know how the ending is going to be. You don't know how the ending is going to be. You only know what the beginning is like. That's all you know, and that's all we know in the DV lottery for DV26. We only know what the beginning was like, and the beginning started way too high, right? Asia 10,000 was nonsense, right? There's never been a year like it, right? So it was a nonsense number plucked out of the sky, and it will take some time for that to actually be a sensible number. So yeah, don't worry about Asia. No need, right? Okay. Send smart device. Stop freaking spamming. I dislike people doing that, right? Don't do that. Hi, sir. I've received notification that my interview is scheduled for this November 24th. Thank you, sir, for all your advice. You're welcome, Christina. Could you let us know which embassy that was and give us your case number? Kind of interesting to hear that information. We don't have good data on which embassies are receiving their 2NLs and that sort of thing, or what number ranges they're at. So it's useful if people will say, here's my case number, here's my embassy. That's helpful for others to understand. AS17K case number, any possibility? Maybe you're in the upper half, but we'll see. AF78K, according to the visa bulletin, which month do you predict I can get the 2NL? Look, that's very obvious. It isn't going to be next month, is it? And it's not going to be for 2 or 3 months from now. So you're clearly, if you get current at AF78K, it's clearly going to be at the back of the bus. It's going to be at the back of the year, the end of the year, right? It almost, when do you expect that to be current? Well, your interview, if you get current, will probably be in August or September next year. Pretty obvious, right? It's not going to be next month. So, again, it's kind of a silly question, really. When does the application start? I think you're talking about DV27, and we don't know yet is the simple answer, but I did talk about that at the beginning of the video here. I'm current as of the August visa bulletin, still haven't heard. Could I ask about the 6 months for moving? Can I visit for a short while sometime to get the card and move properly a couple of months later? Yeah, good question. So firstly, just because you're current doesn't mean you're going to get your interview yet, right? As you've found out. So so sometimes it takes a while for the availability of interview slots to be available at your embassy, and that can delay things, right? So also your DS260 needs to be processed. Okay, so that's probably why you haven't heard anything. But let's go to your other question about the 6 months for moving. Yeah, when you go for interview, and when you're approved, you will get a visa which will have 6 months validity, during which time you have to enter the USA, right? That 6 months actually is timed from the medical interview date. So normally you do the medical, let's say, a couple of weeks before the actual interview. So by the time you get your visa back, let's say a week after the interview, you'll have 5 and a bit months left of validity on your visa, right? And you need to enter the USA before that visa becomes invalid, right? When you enter the USA, though, you can enter and turn back around on the same day if you want and leave again. There's no law that says you have to stay for a minimum amount of time in that first entry period. You can leave. You can be absent from the USA for up to 12 months in any period, but really try and keep your absences less than 6 months these days. The current administration is a pain in the ass, and they are looking for excuses to give people hassle, and it's breeding a bit of a stupid reaction with some of the Border Patrol officers as well. They think they're powerful. They're really not that powerful, but they like to give people a tough time to flex their muscles. And so when you're returning from an absence of less than 6 months, it's technically different than returning for an absence of 6 to 12 months. And so although you can stay out of the country for up to 12 months, and you don't need permission to do that, it is safer to come back after 6 months, or before 6 months, I should say, before 6 months have passed. And that's what you can do. You can enter, activate your green card status, maybe hang around for a week or two if you want, or just go straight home, whatever you want to do. During that week or two when you're here, by the way, you can be looking around for places to live. You could be talking to a bank about opening a bank account. You can get a cell phone. There's some things that you can do to make life easier when you return. Maybe have a word and see what job opportunities there are, or see whether you're going to like this area that you think you're going to settle down in, right? So you can make some sort of proactive plans based on your first entry there. Then you go away, you take 2, 3, 4 months, whatever it takes to tidy up your affairs from the old country, as it were, and then you come and make the permanent move. All of that's fine, no problem with that at all. Okay. Okay, I got my interview in December, like you just said. Thank you. You're very welcome. I can't remember saying that, but I'm DV26 winner from Ghana with 21,000. I've sent my form DS260, already choosing Abidjan as the embassy for interview. They'll ignore that. Do you advise me to request KCC to unlock to select Accra rather? If your address says Accra, if your current address says Accra, you're going to get scheduled in Accra, right? That's where they will schedule you. They will ignore your request. I don't know why you chose Abidjan, but they'll ignore that request, basically. They'll base it on your current address. If you said you live in Abidjan, for example, then be careful that you haven't created a bunch of lies already, right? They're much more sensitive about liars than you think, right? They don't like to be lied to about anything. You must be open and transparent, because a liar will lie, right? If you're prepared to lie about where you live and you're prepared to sort of bullshit them, they know that other document you're presenting is probably also bullshit, right? And whatever comes out of your mouth is probably a lie, because you're very comfortable to lie, right? So don't lie in this process. It's a terrible idea to lie in this process. And I'm sorry, but West Africa in particular is known for fraudulent documents, for not being truthful, and not even understanding that not being truthful means lying. I have arguments with people where I've said, well, don't lie. And they say, well, I didn't lie. I just said this. I said I was single and I know I'm married, but it's not a lie. And I'm like, no, you're a liar. That's a lie. It's not something that you can dress up any other way. You have to understand that lying, it means not telling the truth. So if you create some sort of story that is basically a lie, that's not a good thing. And there was a time when in Accra, back in the days when Accra was interviewing plenty of people, 7 out of 8 interviews in Accra were resulting in denial. It was that bad, right? And as the number of interviews went down, it seemed like the chances of being approved was higher. But when they were seeing a lot of people, they were just routinely denying people because they were just sick and tired of all the fraudulent documents and the lies, frankly. So be very careful in ACRA in particular to be very truthful. Okay, I'm not saying you're a liar. With Aqua Bar Media, but like I say, there are some countries in this world where being creative with the truth is considered normal, and I'm afraid West Africa is known to be that one of those sort of areas, right? Okay. If the passport and fee applied, I don't think there would be more 500,000. If the passport and fee applied, there would be more than 500,000. 500,000 entries. So the passport, so the fee is $1, right? $1 isn't going to make a lot of difference, but the passport rule has been there before, and during the passport rule, there were like I think 11 or 12 million entries. So this 500,000 number, I'm not sure where you get it from, but you're not right. Okay. What would be good signs by early next year about the final number of DV26 for EU going current or close to it? Absolutely no good signs. That's a good question in a way, in that it sort of shows a really bad thought process. You're saying what would be a good sign that we could read from the tea leaves of the visa bulletin in January, let's say, or February, to know what the number would be at the end, right? Complete bullshit, complete nonsense. It doesn't work like that, right? The only thing that we need in order to know where the number is going to get to at the end is to get to the end. We can't judge that based on the number that it's got to, from one month to the other. The way it moves from one month to the other is not indicative of where it's going to end up, right? So there aren't good signs. This isn't like that. This is not that sort of process. Now, you can have, for example, in DV20, DV25, the EU number for the last but one, the penultimate visa bulletin, had reached 22,000. It jumped up by several thousand to get to 22,000. And it seemed like it was within striking distance for the next visa bulletin to have a pretty good ending result between, let's say, 28, 29, 30,000. It seemed like it was sort of nicely prepared to jump off. But then in the last month, they only increased it by 1,000, which was a total shock. It was unnecessarily too low. But what could have predicted that? There's no way you could look at that number, even from the penultimate visa bulletin, and say, that guarantees that the number would have got to this point. We made predictions, we made guesses, but predictions and guesses are they're not always going to be right. I mean, they're more often than not they're going to be wrong, to be honest. So no, there is no good signs, early signs, or whatever. I want to see good movement in the numbers because I want to see more of the work done earlier in the year. I do not like it when they leave all of the work to be done in August and September. That's a bad sign, right? If you want to talk about good signs and bad signs. It was clear to me that the government were doing bad when I saw in sort of March and April and May of last year that they were not scheduling the sort of numbers they had to schedule to take advantage of all of the capacity in the embassies. That was a bad thing in my view. And it unfortunately played out as I feared. But it's not necessary. Like as the months went by, it was like, okay, they wasted another month where they should have been interviewing 3,000 people in a month, and they only interviewed 2,000 in that month because they set the numbers too low. And you can afford to waste a month like that, and maybe 2 months like that. But if they continue to waste some of those good months, and they waste them month after month after month, then they put themselves into a position where that final month for August and September has to be 5, 6, 7,000 interviews have to be arranged, and that's just too many interviews. It's just too chaotic. So that's not good. Okay, let's take. Hi, case number 4000 Asia and Islamabad Embassy. Any hint about 2NL? Kindly, any news about the ban? No news about the ban. People are thinking, people are wondering when the ban will be removed. And my question is, why would the ban be removed? Why do we think Trump is suddenly going to remove the ban? Do we not think he's happy with the ban? Do we think Stephen Miller is less of a racist today than he was yesterday? No, he's every bit as racist today as he was yesterday. And Trump and Stephen Miller want to ban people, so why are they going to remove the ban? There's no court cases that are forcing them to remove the ban. You know, there's no reason for them to remove the ban. So I don't see how the ban's going to get removed, to be honest. I think we're stuck with it for quite some time. And as for Islamabad Embassy, well, you may well be an Afghan. If you're an Afghan, then it's not going to work out so well under the travel ban unless you've got a second nationality, right? So that's what you need to think about. And if you are under the travel ban, why are you going to the interview if you don't have some reason to think you'll be given an exemption? And the exemption from the ban is only going to happen if you've got a second nationality with a passport, or maybe you're from a religious minority or something like that. But generally speaking, the exemptions are not easy to get. The passport one is the one that is reliable. That's the only one that I recommend people really bank on. The other ones are few and far between. Okay. Okay, hello Simon. Regarding individuals originating from the proscribed nations, are they eligible to submit an application for DV-27? What do you mean proscribed nations? I think you mean travel banned. So yeah, so if you're from a travel banned country, you can enter the DV lottery anyway, with the hope that the travel ban will be removed by the time you get selected and processed, right? So yeah, there's no harm in entering the lottery, even if you're currently under a travel ban, if that's what your question is. Okay. AF13K till no info in my case is still at KCC. Yeah, it's probably because your embassy is not scheduling cases yet. That's quite likely. I've seen many DV-26 poll responses from Russia and Ukraine with case numbers over 40K. Does that mean entries weren't limited or the density jumps will be at higher numbers? Marco, you really you overthink everything here. So it means that their entries weren't limited. I think Ukraine often, it used to be Ukraine and Uzbekistan used to be the two countries in Europe that would get limited every year. But looking at the the selectee numbers for for DV-26, I don't think they've been sort of limited too early. We'd have to see. It's a sort of, the limitation for some countries happens on a relative density basis, right? So it wouldn't be at all surprising to see Russia going right until the highest case number is 48,000. Ukraine, I would normally expect to get cut off maybe a little bit towards the 48,000, maybe 40,000, 42, 43,000, something like that. But it might be unlimited. It might go all the way to the end. We just don't know. It's a matter of the relative density of entries, not selectees, entries from all the different countries during the entry process, and therefore where the limitation happens. It doesn't say anything about the density jumps as you're trying to get to. That doesn't mean anything. The only sort of impact that has is if only one country, for example, we don't know, if only one country were limited in the draw, one country in EU being limited, being Uzbekistan, then there would only be one cliff in that data thing. That's perhaps what you mean by the density. But there can be sort of more subtle cliffs from more subtle countries being limited. Not every cliff is recognizable as a big drop like Uzbekistan. And Uzbekistan is particularly visible because it's a very, very dense number of selectees, with a very sudden drop of like 20% of the EU entries. But we don't have that data, right? So until we see the January 1 numbers, what's the point of endlessly talking about this, Marco? And I know you're trying to sort of just understand everything, but until we get the data, why are we going to speculate? Seems a bit nuts, really. Dante says, I think DV27 will start in 2nd December, that's this year. Based on nothing except plucking from the sky, that's Dante's belief. Hello, sir. This time grade 10 qualified are allowed or not for DV registration. You have to understand that there are 200 countries around the world that have different types of education systems around the world. And when you ask a question like grade 10 qualified, you seem to think that I know instantly where you live, what education system you went through, and that in my brain, I'm tracking the education system requirements from every single one of those 200 countries. So you think I've got the ability to read your mind, which I don't, and store lots of information. I can barely remember my name on some days. So I'm not able to sort of remember instantly with total perfect recall the education system in every country. So when you say grade 10 qualified, I don't know what that means in your country. Does that mean at grade 10 you can go to university? Or is it like most countries where you have to go through 12 years of education, etc.? So I don't know. You're not giving me any information on which to give you a sensible answer. So is Afghans allowed to apply this year, and is it necessary to have a passport when you apply? I don't know about the passport, and yes, Afghans can apply. When will DV27 going to start, and what is the requirements? I don't know, Alex. Any news about interviews in Casablanca? No news about that. And the data isn't there that can give me that real information for you, right? So we have to wait until January 1 to get the SEAC data to really get the truth about what people are saying. It may be true. The rumor is that Casablanca hasn't received any interviews for December or November or October. That may be true. It doesn't necessarily mean that they won't take lots of interviews in January or February or March or whatever. It doesn't mean anything in particular, but it does represent a little bit of a waste of those months, right? So we'll have to wait and see if that's really true. Okay. Covenant Fashions Katani. Do I need a notarized affidavit to support a name change from my maiden name to my husband's name? I have a marriage certificate. Typically, in most countries, the marriage certificate is all you need. The marriage certificate in most countries shows the maiden name of the woman, typically, and shows the new married name of the woman, and that's the only document that you need for to represent the name change from a legal point of view. Having said that, that's very dependent on laws in your country, and so you have to think about laws and procedures in your country. I don't know. I don't even know your country. Again, I don't have the ability to read your minds through the YouTube channels. I don't know. So unless you tell me, and unless I happen to know what it's like to live in Tanzania or wherever the hell you're living, I don't know, right? So you know better than I do what are the procedures in your country. Okay. Hello, Simon. Thanks for the infos you've been sharing. What do you think about the performance of Ankara Embassy for DV26 interview? So Ankara is one of those embassies that I'm normally worried about. But this year, I'm happy to say that from the evidence that I've got from the forum information where they track a lot of cases, it seems that Ankara is performing much better than previous years and scheduling plenty of people right up to current numbers, right? So the EU current number is 7,750. I know people as far as 7,600 something have got their interviews arranged in Ankara. So that's a very positive sign. It does appear that Ankara are doing better than they have done in previous years. Will that continue? I don't know. I certainly hope so. That will be very reassuring for people in that area. So we'll see. Are there any rules for wearing clothes in the picture for application? What? Yeah, you've got to wear clothes in the picture for application. Yes. Don't be naked. Like, what are you thinking? I was wearing a white T-shirt, and the photographer told me that my application can be rejected. Yeah, it's not smart. So you know that the photo has to be taken against a white background, right? And in DV Photo Tool, oh, hang on a second. Let me just DV Photo Tool. In dvphototool.com, we take out the background, right? Now, if, oh dear, I shouldn't have done that. Oh dear. Yeah, there we go. There's the thing. If you're wearing a white T-shirt and you've got a white background behind you, then you're going to see this sort of, the white background is going to disappear, right? If you see a green card, it's got your photo on the green card, and so if you were wearing a white T-shirt, it can kind of make you look like a disembodied head. You'll just see the bit of the neck and outside of the T-shirt, for example, and then your head, because your white T-shirt will merge into the background. So the photographer was sort of correct. It's unwise to take a photo with a white T-shirt, right? Now, think about that when you are going to take your photos. Try and have something a little bit more contrasty, like this color, for example. That would be a better idea. Okay. Sam says, is there any info about DV27? We're selected for 25, but no visa scheduled, unfortunately. Yeah, it's sad. Yeah, we don't know about DV27 yet. Winner from Ghana, AF 500. You submitted your DS260 in August. Is it possible you'll get your 2NL? You will get a 2NL. Your number is very, very low, of course, but you submitted late. So all the people that submitted in March and June and July were all being processed while you hadn't even submitted yet. And so you've hit that backlog, and it may take a little bit of time before your DS260 is processed. So you just have to be patient. And once your DS260 is processed, you'll then be put in a batch of people who are all being added to the queue for interviews in a given month. And your number, because your number is low, your number will be sorted towards the beginning of that batch of people that are inserted into the AV queue. But anybody who is put into the AV status, the AV queue, in the month before you, even if their case number is higher than yours, they will stay in front of you. Okay. And so, yeah, you cause yourself a little bit of a delay. That's only really a problem if your embassy doesn't schedule enough interviews. And so we've yet to see whether ACRA are going to do that or not. Right? We have to wait and see. Okay. I will stay with my cousin, and I have about 20K savings. Should I submit I-134? If you can show the 20K savings and you're going to stay with your cousin, so you've got a good plan, that might be enough to get you through the interview. The I-134 might be an easier way to approach it. If your cousin can fill that out for you, for example, that might be a good way. But the 20K savings is probably going to be impressive to the consular officer anyway. Okay. Okay. I see a lot of this sort of question. Should we set our profiles set as public when applying? And if we deleted some of the social media accounts during the span of the last 5 years, should we mention those as well? Yes, you should mention the deleted accounts. You should not be messing around with your public and private settings, etc., simply because of DV lottery. You should also not be deleting accounts because of DV lottery. Just exercise some transparency. Don't do anything different because of the DV lottery application. It looks suspicious when you close applications, social media applications, and you try and hide them from your DS260. Don't create that suspicion. That's far worse, in my opinion, than giving your DV application, giving your social media profiles. Just behave normally. If you keep them public or if you keep them private or whatever, just whatever they're set to, just leave them alone. Okay. Just let it be. As a Brit selectee with EU33 case number, Forever Boutique, Do you think likely timings would be for potential interviews? DS260 complete, keeping everything crossed going goes current would be for a family of 4. Okay, so congrats. Hopefully you understand about the lawsuit that got you to be a Brit selectee. But anyway, so 33K is very good, a very good number compared to a lot of the UK selectees. Some have got case numbers up to 180K and so on, and those are in a pretty bad way, frankly. EU 33K is probably okay, but it's in the sort of the risky cutoff range as far as I would imagine at the moment. We think EU numbers in general go up to about 48K. And there are too many people selected in DV26, and for EU, there's only one country travel ban, right? So it looks likely that the impact from travel bans for the other regions could have a positive impact for EU. That could help. But nevertheless, 33K is certainly higher than we got to last year at 23K. So, there is some risk, right? It's not a guaranteed thing. Now, if your number gets current, it would probably be current for August or September interviews next year. That's probably what's going to happen. The timing will be about that, right? It's not likely that that's going to be current in January or February or March, or whatever. It's going to be towards the back end of next year. So you have to just wait and see what happens. I would love it if case numbers would move very fast and we'd get to, high case numbers early in the year, but I don't see that's going to happen at the moment. We'll have to wait and see. Okay, good luck anyway. Never give up on yourself. I was having a case number of AF74964. Not only that, but I was always having some issues with my case, but God did. God did. I came on your live and you advised me not to even continue. No, I don't think I said don't even continue, but apparently God's much smarter than me. Whatever. So I'm not quite sure of what your comment was, and it's kind of funny because you say I advise you not to even continue. I don't think that's true, but you don't mention the year. But anyway, it makes a lovely story to tell on Sunday morning, right? Anyway. Indeed, I got rejected, but later they called me back, and today I'm in the USA. Is that the same? Oh, yeah. I got rejected, but later they called me back. Today I'm in the USA. Yeah. I don't recall you answering this question before. I probably missed it, but how could this delay affect DV28? DV28, Jesus, what are we talking about DV28 for? Can we get to DV27 first? I don't know anything. I haven't thought about any impacts of DV28. I don't think this delay affects DV28. I don't know why you're talking about DV28. Are you talking about DV27? No, I don't. Your question doesn't make sense if it's about DV27. So I don't know what you're talking about. There you go. The countries got banned. May can travel US and May can apply DS260. Can they get the visa? Okay, so people who are selectees, they are selected as winners, and they're from travel ban countries. They can fill in the DS260. They can and will be scheduled for interview, right? They can attend those interviews, but at those interviews they will be denied unless they are entitled to some exemption. What can the exemptions be? Typically, the most reliable exemption is that you've got a passport and a citizenship of a travel banned country, but you also have obtained at some point in your life a second citizenship and you've got a passport of that country, and that country is not travel banned. In that case, you can be exempted from the travel ban, even though your eligibility for the lottery was from the travel banned country. You travel on the passport of the second non-travel banned country. That's the most reliable exemption. There's a couple of other possibilities, but they're really, unlikely to be achieved. Okay. So there you go. Uncle B. If the office finds it hard to implement the $1 rule, is it fair to say that this year applications will get harder to submit? I don't know why it would be harder. Finds it hard to I don't know why it would be harder to submit the application. Maybe if the $1 fee is implemented, it may be hard in some countries because it's maybe more difficult to pay that $1 fee. The payment systems that they will implement may not cover every single country, right? And so, or maybe not everyone in those countries has got a debit or credit card that is acceptable to make that payment. So there could be some challenges in some local countries somewhere. But other than that, I don't know why else it would be harder to submit. I'll have to see. I was born in the UAE and right now I'm in Pakistan. Can I apply for DV? And will the interview be scheduled in UAE or Pakistan? Your eligibility is based on where you're born, not where you're currently living. Your place of interview is based on where you're currently living, not where you're born, right? So in your case, you're eligible to enter the lottery because you were born in the UAE, and as long as you've got proof of that, etc., you'll be fine. And then you'll interview in Pakistan because that's where you live. Quite simple. Okay. Okay. Hi Ryan, how you doing? Just dropping in hope all is well. Your fellow UK 130 case number friend here. Keep doing what you're doing. Hopefully you have some good luck at some point. Yeah, I hope so. Ryan, I can't see how it will happen, but hope so. Do enter DV27, though. That might be a good thing. Okay. What's the probability for the passport requirement to be implemented based on the delay timing of DV27? The passport rule was not implemented. They opened that up for public comment. That public comment period is finished, but there's not been a publication of a rule, as far as I've seen, that says now we're going to implement the passport rule. Okay, so right now the $1 fee is probably going to be implemented, and that's probably why the delay is happening for the entry period. Right now, as it stands today, the passport rule is not a rule that's been published. It was only for a discussion point. And so I think it's unlikely today that becomes part of the next entry period. However, if there's a delay of another month or so, yeah, maybe the passport rule starts to become more logical to implement that as well. It's possible. We have to wait and see. I don't know how to calculate the probabilities of that, though, right? Doesn't make a lot of sense to calculate that. Hello, everyone of his here wanting to have a great USA. Yeah. Is there a chance that DV27 can be cancelled this year? No. Hello, case number 30, AF37K. What's the expected time to get to and out? Probably February. Maybe January, February, maybe March. Something around about that time. Paul UK 12K. Good number. Thanks for all your work and the immense patience who are answering the same questions over and over again. Yeah, I certainly am. Patiently waiting for that VB number to trickle over. Yeah, I mean, EU 12K, brilliant. Got a great number there. So UK as well. Yeah. Right. Let's see. Okay, let's see. How can an immigrant with entry-level skills, so not a professional in any trade, make it in the USA? Is it hard to find a studio apartment and also work? Okay, so if you don't have a profession or whatever, it's still possible to make it, pretty good in the USA, as long as you live and work, in certain ways. You live humbly. Come here with an immigrant mindset where you are, where you realize that you're going to have to work harder. Basically, there's two ways you can go in life. I mean, at least two ways. But you can either be well qualified, trained, and go for a profession. And frankly, if you're in that situation, you probably work less hard than somebody who is untrained, doesn't have a profession, etc. If you don't have a profession, you probably have to work at least one job, maybe two jobs, etc., to get by. And to me, getting by means paying all your bills, but only after you've saved about 25% of your salary. If you're not saving 25% of your salary, um, towards the future, then you're not getting by, in my opinion, right? Even today, I still save about 25, 30% of my salary. Um, and I'm talking that six-figure income I'm saving every year because I'm saving towards my retirement, etc. Now, you have to think that way. You have to sort of do that thing. If you do that, let's say, let's talk about sort of an average job in this country, right? You can easily go out and create a 30, 40, 50K a year income for yourself, even without training or profession in this country, right? And out of, let's say, a 50K income, let's say you can, and it might take you two jobs, you might have to work two jobs to get that 50K income. Out of that, you should be able to save $1,000 a month, right? 25% of a 50K salary would be what, 12,500. So you should be able to save $1,000 a month and therefore live on the remainder. And the remainder will be after tax, whereas the 25% is before tax, right? So, I'm telling you, not many people will do this, but the people that do this will do very well. So if you can go out there and you're earning 50 grand a year and you're saving $1,000 a month, you'll have $12,000 saved after year one, and that money will be invested and starting to gain interest. In year two, you'll save another $12,000, and between those 2 years with interest, you'll then have a nest egg of probably 26, 27, 28,000, right? In year three, you save another 12. Maybe you save a little bit more that year. You've increased your income, you've got an extra job or whatever it is. Now you've got $30,000, $40,000 saved. That money is growing. You're getting sort of like, if you've invested well, probably 8, 9, 10% interest on that money. So the money itself is starting to grow. So by year three and by year four, you've probably got $50,000 saved up, which is, what you should be doing. Now, there's a few things that you can do with that sort of money. You can buy a franchise business, for example, and you can start to have a second business going while you do your day job. Or maybe that business that you buy, it becomes your day job, and you can start to make money that way. You can invest that money passively and have that money grow for you, continue to grow for you, etc. And so from a relatively humble beginning, you can not suddenly, but over time, you can find yourself in a position where you've got 2 or 3 income streams, and you're saving more and more of that money, etc., and you'll gain more and more financial clout. Along the way there, you should be buying a house. Along the way there, you should be avoiding debt. You should not be, buying brand new cars. You should not be buying expensive cars. You shouldn't be buying expensive clothes and so on. You should live frugally, live humbly, live below your means so that you can save lots of money to get into a better position. If you do that, you will become wealthy in this country. If you live like that, you will become wealthy, no matter what your baseline income is. It literally is as simple as that to create wealth. Because once you've created some money savings, and you can put that money to work for you, in America, more than in other countries, that money is powerful, right? In other countries, there's not even opportunity. I was listening to someone from Italy the other day, and they were saying that in Italy, there's so much bureaucracy that the government is almost working against you when you want to start a business. It's the same thing in Spain. I know that in the UK, it's maybe not quite so bad. But in European countries, for example, it's difficult for you to put your money to work and actually make, good money from it. Whereas here in America, it's very easy to put your money to work and actually start, getting a payback from that. And so, if you live sensibly, and you're humble and you work hard and you realize that you've got to save money more than anything else, you have to. And the way you do that, by the way, is you get your weekly paycheck or your monthly paycheck or whatever it is, and you immediately take money out of that paycheck first, right? That's the first bill you pay. You pay your future self before you pay everything else. Then you pay your bills, like your your rent or whatever it is, your mortgage and everything else, and you live off what's left, right? What you don't do is you don't sort of get your money, pay your bills, live off what's left, and there's nothing left for saving, right? You don't save what's left, you save first. Saving is the most important thing, right? So saving for the future and creating wealth for tomorrow is much more important than going and seeing, the football game today, or going to the movies, or that bloody Starbucks cup of coffee for $7 when there's free coffee in the office, right? You've got to start making smart choices. I see so many young kids who complain about boomers. I'm one of the last boomers. I was born in 1964, so I'm one of the last boomers, right? And so the younger generation, Gen X and everything else, they are always talking about how it was easy in my day, and now it's harder. But they're talking to you on a $1,000 phone, right? They're sitting there sipping their Starbucks $7 drink. They're sitting in their car, which they've got a car loan for. They're idiots, these kids. They just don't understand that in my day, we didn't have all those things. What we did was we just got another job. If we wanted more stuff, we would go and get another job, etc. We would work hard, and we would, spend less, and we had less to spend on. We weren't being told that it was important to go to Starbucks and to talk to people. We would just sit in a park and talk to each other, and we would socialize face to face rather than on our $1,000 phones, right? $1,000 for a bloody phone. Like you're a nutcase if you think that's a sensible idea. So $1,000 phone, and then a $60, $70 a month phone contract, and then a car loan of $500 to $700 a month, and then car insurance at $200 a month, and rent and everything else. And all these are decisions that you don't have to make those decisions. You don't have to buy an expensive phone. You can get a cheap phone contract. And you don't have to go buy a car on finance. You can, if you can save up $5,000, you can buy a very nice car, very nice reliable car for $5,000. It's not going to impress the neighbors, maybe, but it's then a paid for car. So live smart, and you'll be fine. So is it possible with no professional skills to make it in the USA? It absolutely is, but I'm not saying it's easy. You're going to have to make some hard choices. You're going to have to work hard, maybe do a second job. Maybe instead of sitting at home watching some stupid TV series, you can sit and educate yourself so you can get another job. You get a better job, right? Maybe you take some night school classes. Maybe you go out and you do DoorDash delivery or Uber driving or something. Or maybe you go stack shelves in a supermarket. I had a really interesting dinner with a lovely couple from the Ukraine, older couple, and this guy was a professionally trained architect, well-known architect in the Ukraine, and came to America back in the 80s. And when he came as a fully qualified architect, he then had a young family, and so he was working as an architect in America. And at nighttime, he was stacking shelves in a supermarket, like doing night work, etc., sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night, and then back to his day job, etc. And then he'd do another job at the weekend, and he was working hard and harder and harder to try and get ahead. Now he's in a very strong position. He's got a very nice house near to us. Successful family. He's put his kids through college and so on, and he's just recently retired very comfortably. He's an example of how an immigrant can exploit the American dream, and it really is possible. But you do have to work hard, and you have to self-sacrifice, and you have to avoid the traps that Americans fall into every day. Okay, so yeah, good luck. This is a whole conversation about how to get ahead, but the most important thing is that you learn to save money immediately, and then you learn how to invest that money and what to do with it longer term. I owe you all more education about that, and I will work on that. Okay, let's see. How is the job market with a master's degree in business/HR and from the Caribbean? Um, Business/HR is always one of those things that's kind of, in good economies, those jobs can be quite good, but in bad economies, and we're in a bad economy right now, those jobs are the ones which tend to be at threat, right? So you've got to upskill yourself a little bit. You've got to make sure that not only are you good in business/HR, because your HR skills from the Caribbean won't be the same as the HR skills in America, right? Your understanding of the law and processes won't be the same. But make sure you're upskilled. Make sure you're good at some of those technologies like AI, like, how to process data. Be a little bit more than just someone in business and HR. Be the person that can, do data processing for your role, right? That you're able to sort of extract data from systems, crunch the numbers, present the information in a nice way. Use AI in order to help you with, nice presentations, nice data presentation, and so on. Go a little bit beyond the norm, right? If you do that, and if you stand out above others, then the opportunities will still be there, even in a bad economy. But if you're just the run-of-the-mill business HR person, then it's going to be tough. A bit of luck, you'll be okay. But hopefully, you've got that luck, right? Okay. Okay. Can I have your contact? You've got my contact. You can ask me questions at brittsimonsays.com. Please ask questions either on the live sessions here or at britssimonsays.com. Right? You don't need to contact me directly. When I answer questions for people in public, it makes sure that more than one person can read that answer and benefit from that answer. So it multiplies my time, right? And the questions, as someone pointed out earlier, the questions are the same questions that come back time and time again. I've been doing this, helping people through the DV lottery since 2013. So 12 years or so. And the questions have not really changed all those years. I answer the same questions over and over again because I understand the questions are the same. You've got the same questions year upon year, etc. But if you ask the questions in public, then eventually that that library of questions will help people. Some people, I get messages from people who have used my blog or perhaps my live videos and so on to help them through the process. And I get the ones I like. I love the questions where I've interacted with people. I love the people dropping in and saying hi, we spoke before, and sometimes I remember them from previous years, and now they're living in America and living a great life in America. I love that. But occasionally I get messages from people where people say, hey, I never asked you a question, but I got the answer, all the answers I need from your blog or from the videos or whatever. And so I know I'm helping more people than I'm speaking to, and that's only possible if I'm answering the questions in public, which is why I don't take the questions. That's the main reason, actually, why I don't take the questions through private email. Okay, I'm not doing this for money. I'm not charging you any fees or anything. I'm not offering a service like a lawyer or anything like that, right? I'm just trying to help you, and I'm trying to do that in the most time-effective way possible, to multiply my time to answer those questions for as many people as possible. That's what I'm trying to achieve. Okay. And here's another sort of person. I need your WhatsApp or email contact. I have an emergency for clarification. I want to take photo and support me check. I have myopia. When I don't wear glasses, I don't see well. Okay, so you have to take your glasses off for the photo, right? You can take a photo, get somebody else to take a photo for you, and go to dvphototool.com and have that process your photo through my website. It'll cost you a few bucks, but it's worth it. That will check your photo for you, so it will check that you're meeting the compliance rules, right? And based on that, you don't need my WhatsApp or my email contact, right? I don't. There are 20 million people who enter the lottery every year. I don't have time to answer emails from lots and lots of people who want me to look at their photo personally. It's just not possible. I have to try and multiply my time somehow. And the photo tool app, dvphototool.com, is one way that I'm doing that. Okay. Another person, I want to have a one-on-one conversation with you. Can you inbox me, sir? No. Can bad grades on high school certificate disqualify during interview time? Yes, absolutely. In some countries, and I mentioned this earlier, the rules change by the education system for every individual country. But in some embassies, they will insist that if you've come from this country, you need to have grades of a certain level on the core subjects. For example, they'll have a core 4 or 5 subjects typically. And on those subjects, you have to have a passing grade. So yes, you can get disqualified at interview if you have not met those standards. And it's basically the level of education that you have to prove is that you would be able to immediately enter a university with the level of high school education that you got, right? That you could go from high school, which is typically at about age 17 or 18. You complete that at about age 17 or 18 in America, at least. And you could immediately go to university or college to begin a bachelor's degree education. It isn't necessary that you have a bachelor's. It's necessary that you reach the level of education that would allow you to enter the university. That's the level of education they are expecting. So if you went through high school education, but you failed your core subjects, you would not be able to enter university unless you took some sort of adult makeup class, right? And in that case, your education doesn't meet the qualifications because the makeup class doesn't help you and you didn't meet the education level necessary to go to university. That's basically it, okay? Okay. I'm DV26, EU25K. I live in the Netherlands, so I'll be assigned to Frankfurt embassy if I get an interview. Yeah. Is it a well-performing embassy based on past years? Yeah, it's usually good. For a couple of years, it was more difficult whilst it was having overflow from the UK and Russia thing. But it's typically a pretty good embassy. So yeah, your number's a little bit on the sort of medium to high side, so it's not totally safe, but probably safe. It's probably in that sort of okay number range. But it's possible that the numbers could end earlier. You just have to wait and see, right? Okay, let's take 1 or 2 more questions and we'll call it a day. See if I can find some good questions. Okay, a couple of good ones here. My date of birth on my high school certificate was wrong, but my birth certificate and other legal documents are right. Can I get a court affidavit to support my high school certificate? Remember, your high school certificate only needs to be shown as being your high school certificate. It does not prove your name or your date of birth. Your birth certificate proves your date of birth and your name, your identity. Your passport matches your birth certificate, hopefully. With your education documents, you're purely trying to show that that is your education document. It doesn't matter if the date of birth is wrong on that, okay? So just focus on how you can prove that that is your education certificate. Next one here. Hi, Simon. With the medical, I served 10 years in the British Army. Thank you for your service, sir. Was medically discharged with anxiety and depression in 2022. Is this a failure on the medical? No, absolutely not. The only thing they're worried about in the medical for the US immigration process, Daniel, is whether you've got diseases or represent some sort of threat to the public in the USA. So they can get a little bit. There's only 4 diseases for a start that will cause an outright denial of your case if it can't be treated. And sometimes those diseases can't be treated in time. TB, for example, is one of those. And it takes some time to treat TB, so it depends on whether you've got time to get the treatment or not. So anyway, 4 diseases that will cause denial. Having wearing glasses, having one leg shorter than the other, having lost an arm or lost an ear or something, none of that is important because those things don't affect anybody else in the USA. right? It's only the diseases that affect other people in the USA. With regard to the anxiety and depression, that would only be an issue if you had thoughts of public harm, right? If you know what I mean. Like, you were affected by your stint in the British Army and you had feelings that are not good for public health, shall we say, right? That's the only way that those things could be an issue. There's plenty of Americans with anxiety and depression. So having anxiety and depression on your record, as it were, is not a big deal for the U.S. immigration process. But take care of yourself, and don't worry about this particular thing. And the weather will be better for you, Daniel. Oh wow! I rarely get a question about the North American region. Can you give any info on the region North America, which is just the Bahamas, about case numbers? What number goes current, etc.? Do case numbers every get past 75 or so? It's rare that we get North American numbers at 75, right? Normally that region sort of goes current, and the case numbers are 20 or 30 or whatever, are typically as far as it gets to, right? So if you are from the North American region, please let me know what your number is. I'd be interested. But I think it's already at 20, right? So that's probably, it's already pretty high. So I wouldn't sort of worry too much about the numbers in the North American region, because it's normally possible for that region to go current or close to it. Okay. What do I think about the case number of 3,200 for the SA region, medium to high probability? I think it's probably a good number. I don't think that's going to be a problem. There are 4,200 selectees in South America. Last year was 4,600. I think the difference between those two numbers is probably the Cuban selectees that got knocked out. So the Cuban selectees would have created more gaps or holes between the numbers, because there were some Cubans selected. And so those gaps will help the case numbers go a little bit faster, just a little bit, about 10% or so, extra gaps, as it were, roughly speaking, about 400 people, which is probably about 200 cases out of 4,200 people, let's say, which is probably about 2,000 cases. So it's a small percentage difference, but it could help. Okay. So yeah. All right. Fun fact with Sam says, I have come to Cali and give you your gift and also a hug. Oh, I don't know if you remember or not that I promised that in 2022 for all the help you offered and actually helped us come here from around. That's lovely. I have met a couple of people actually over the years. I live just outside San Francisco. I'm in the sort of Livermore area. So if you're ever around here and if somebody wants to contact me to meet up, I'm always happy to have a coffee and have a hug, and be delighted if you want to contact me if you're in that area. But yeah, thanks for that. Over the years, like I say, I've met some lovely people, and I really appreciate it. And a couple of people have remained my friends for many years. In fact, the lead developer, my partner in dvphototool.com, is a lottery winner that I helped go through the process, and he has a really interesting story. His case, funnily enough, changed the rules for DV lottery process. So he had applied. I'm maybe saying too much, but anyway, he had applied using status of married when he wasn't actually married, because he believed he was in a common law marriage situation. And in those days, claiming to be married when you were actually single was an ambiguous denial situation. It wouldn't always get denied. Sometimes they would deny, sometimes they wouldn't. And so I helped him go through that process. He actually did get approved. This was back in, I think, 2016 or 2017. And he's now an American citizen. He worked for one of the big technology companies. You would recognize the name of the company he works for. He's a software engineer, one of the higher level software engineers here, earning good money, and very, very smart guy. And we see him regularly, and he helped with the development of the photo tool app. Great story. And he's somebody else I can promise you that he also, I was asked that question earlier about living in California. He's somebody else that would be able to demonstrate how living in an expensive area was hard to begin with, but he has done very well. Now, not everyone is in that situation. I get that, but the opportunities here for some people are tremendous. Anyway, fun fact with Sam. I hope to meet you one day, and best of luck. All right. Okay. Oh, and you gave me a little $5 there, which I appreciate that. I'll go buy coffee on that. Thank you. That's sweet of you. Good financial advice, whoever you are. Thanks for the reminder. Yeah, absolutely. Whoever you are. It doesn't matter whether you're an immigrant or not. It doesn't matter whether you don't come to America. Live, like I'm saying, live below your means, save money, and then invest that money. By the way, on that thought, I've been thinking through a video that I want to create about this, but actually it will spring out to various videos, because when you come to America, there are several things that you're going to want to do. You're going to want to save money in order to buy a house, right? Or an apartment or whatever. You need to, in America, you need to be owning property. That's really a very, very important thing. And in fact, as a private landlord, you can do very, very well in this country. The tax advantages for property owners in this country are tremendous. So this country is one where it makes a lot of sense to own your own home, and then also invest in other homes. So buy houses. That's one thing. The second thing is that you're going to want to invest in retirement accounts, which are like 401k and IRA accounts. And so you're going to want to do those. Thank you. You're going to want to do those sort of accounts. You want to invest in retirement accounts. Those are important accounts to invest in, but you can't access those accounts until you're 60 years old or something, right? 59 and a half for an IRA, and later for 401k accounts. So those are good for retirement. And for a lot of people, buying your own home and investing in retirement accounts is all they need to do to assure themselves of a comfortable life, because they'll have a comfortable place to live, while they're working, and then when they retire, they'll have a comfortable place. But for some group of people, some of you will want to sort of take things to the next level, and you'll want to take advantage of things like business ownership, etc., and either business or property ownership to make more. So some of you will not only invest money in order to buy a house, and not only invest money in your retirement accounts, but you're going to want to invest money in shorter term savings accounts, where you can then grow that money to a certain point and reinvest that money. And so you really put that money to work. And you can do extremely well in America by doing that. Again, like I said earlier, unlike other places. So, those are going to be the main things. But every person is different. Some of you are going to have different levels of interest in how hard you work, how much you invest, how much you risk. Everybody's got different perspectives, right? And so, some of you will want to do some things that others wouldn't, right? For some of you, you would rather, for example, and this is perfectly valid. It depends on your age, depends on where you are at in life, and so on. But if you're in your 20s, for example, you may not think it's very important to invest into your retirement account, but I can tell you it really makes a lot of sense to do that. But if you're in your 20s, you should be saving cash money in order to invest, so that in your 30s and in your 40s, you reap the benefit of having businesses that you own that will grow your wealth very quickly, right? So, and the other big thing here is understanding tax law in this country. When you get, so the way things work here is if you're an employee, you get paid an income. Your income will be taxed at source, right? So you're paid by your employer, but your employer withholds money for you to pay the taxes, right? When you own a business here, you get all of the money for your business. You pay your expenses out of that, and you pay taxes on what's left. So the difference between employed people and self-employed people is employed people earn money, get taxed, and live off what's left, whereas the self-employed people get money, they live and invest on that money, and they get taxed on what's left. You see the difference there? So it makes sense to get yourself into a business position. So even if you're an employee, you can own a business, and you can begin to get some tax advantages. And better than that, if you own a property, whether it's for your own personal home or whether it's for investment purposes, you get to offset some of your expenses against your tax as well from owning a property. The tax code in this country is written for people that own businesses and own property. And so if you want to get, to be like rich people in this country, you have to behave like the rich people in this country. Rich people in this country have money to spare, right? And they invest that money in assets that create income. And they pay less tax, and they get more assets, right? That's basically how they do it. So live like that. But the key to that is firstly learning to live below your means. That's important, right? So anyway, I'm hoping that's sinking in. I really, probably that's the most important thing I can help some of you people with, actually, is just helping you think about money a little bit differently. And this really applies in any country. Doesn't matter where you live, it's the same thing. Okay. Amazingly fatherly rant, Uncle B. Thank you for your hard-hitting advice. Yeah. Advice. Boomer guy. Right. Okay. Thanks for the financial advice. It was a good reminder. Well, let's get together and see let's do a checkup with you and make sure you're doing things right. Don't go and buy fancy cars and stuff. It's, it's the worst thing you can do. Okay, this will be the last question. That's kind of interesting, even though you've repeated it a number of times. So, hi, Mr. Simon, DV26 Iraq, Asia 16,700-ish. DS260 on September 30th, 2025. Waited quite a while, wasted some time. Since 50% of Asia is under the ban, is March, April realistic from the case number to go current and get an interview? Yeah, you thought through that pretty well. That's probably what's going to happen. I think that sort of teen range, the 16, 17, 18,000 numbers in Asia, probably more this year than in previous years, are probably safer and probably will go current a little bit earlier. But like I mentioned earlier, the problem with the travel ban cases is that they will still be processed. The KCC still have to do the processing on those DS260s. They still have to schedule those cases. Those people don't just lose their right to process their case. Those people can go and have their interview. They're entitled to have their interview and turn up for their interview if they want. It's just that they won't be given a visa unless they've got an exemption, right? So the processing and the interview slots are still taken up by those travel ban cases. And therefore, it's not quite so obvious that we're going to get to high case numbers in Asia, even simply because of the travel ban. The number of visas issued will be low based on the number of cases processed, yes. But that takes a while for that to feed through the system. And that's why it probably won't really sort of have strong impact until later in the process. But so maybe March, April, maybe May, June, more like that. Okay. All right. Okay. Hope that was an interesting session for you today. I hope that answered a ton of your questions. I'm not going to apologize for spending quite so much time on the financial stuff. I think that's important. And, one thing is to come here. I've had people who have come here and it hasn't worked out well for them. They've struggled here. And so, I don't believe you have to struggle here. Even if you're doing low paid jobs here, you don't have to struggle. You just have to work a bit harder. And that's not a great thing to say. I understand that. But it does mean that if you go out and you get minimum wage jobs, you're probably going to end up with 2 jobs or maybe even 3 jobs. Just like the story I told you earlier about the architect. Real story. Real friend of ours lives very near me in town here. I got stories from neighbors that you wouldn't believe. I was sitting in my front yard yesterday with a couple of neighbors. Let me just sort of put it this way. So I'm sitting in the front yard of my house because it's Halloween night, right? And so kids are coming around and getting candy. So we're handing out candy to kids. Fun time. And I'm sitting there and I'm sitting with a guy who has just sold one hotel and he's just buying another hotel. He lives in a $3 million house, nicer than my house. He's got, business interests up the wazoo, wealthy guy. And he's not the wealthiest guy on my road by any means. Then another guy comes over who's just recently bought a house in the road. He paid $2.9 million dollars for his house just about 3 months ago, and he's just moving in. And he came over to say hi and meet a couple of neighbors, right? And that guy bought a couple of franchises, and I want to explain what he did. But he basically bought some franchises of a blue-collar business that he worked in himself as a blue-collar worker. He drives a truck. He's a simple guy, But that guy probably is generating an income of probably $1 million a year through his businesses, and that meant that he could afford to buy a $3 million house, right? And then my neighbor, who's retired, came over. Another guy, wealthy guy. Everyone's wealthy, right? So there's plenty of people who have got what many of you would consider unbelievable money. But what is common to a lot of them is that they either worked jobs and invested very carefully and very wisely, or they took some savings and they invested it into businesses, and those businesses did well while they kept their day jobs as well. And if in America you can do those things, you can do very well. So that is, that's the big difference. So maybe you come to America and you start working in a McDonald's, and you're working on minimum wage or whatever. That doesn't mean that you're going to fail in America at all. You might just have to get an extra job, and then you might have to start saving more of that money and investing that money and so on. Doesn't matter how humble your beginnings. That's not what counts. It's where you end up that counts. It's how you get there that counts. It's how hard you work and what you do, how you support your family, and what your personal goals are, right? Maybe you just want to come to America to be safe, and that's fine too. It's not all about money, right? Maybe you just want to come and have freedom, religious freedom or personal freedom or whatever it might mean. Maybe you just want to live in better weather. Whatever your goals are, you can do it in America, but it is so much easier to do it from a position where you've got enough money to pay the bills. So that's something I want to make sure that you understand. All right, okay, everybody. Thanks for joining with me. I'm seeing DV Photo Tool on the screen there. So make sure you go to DV Photo Tool and look at that. It's probably, by the way, you might want to hold off and wait on creating the photos. You don't want to have a photo that is older than 6 months old when you enter the lottery, right? So you don't have to get the photo done now, but you can go through and you can check out that site and make sure you know how to create your photo. Okay? All right, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.